Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be working with if-else statements, conditional statements, to make a more sophisticated project than the one from earlier in the lesson. Alright, so let's check out the template that I'm going to be giving you guys. So I don't know if y'all ever been to the club, but if you try to go to the club, there's usually somebody out front checking IDs that's like the bouncer. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to take that bouncer's job by making an app to replace him. But we're not going to tell them because bouncers are usually really tough and they would probably beat me up if they knew we were making an app to replace their job. So basically what the robot is going to do is it's going to ask the age of the person trying to enter the club. Maybe you would automate this by scanning an ID. So if we put in, I don't know, like 32 or something and we check the age, BouncerBot should actually let us into the club. Right now it doesn't do anything, but if we put in like, I don't know, 10 years old, BouncerBot should reject us from the club, so we can't go clubbing. All right, so to help you guys out with this, I basically built the template. So you can actually see the HTML, even though the site looks, I'd say the site looks pretty good. The HTML is actually really simple here. We've got a div, an h1, which is BouncerBot, a paragraph, some paragraph and input pair so that we can get some information, and then a button here where we check the age. Now the styling is a little complicated looking, but it's actually all styling that you guys have worked with before. I use a bit of CSS grid in order to lay out some columns and rows here. But yeah, this is where we're starting. I also included a couple of audio files. So I was thinking that it would be really cool to make it like so that the bouncer bot is like, "You're" when we get into the club, and then "nah, bro" when we can't get into the club. So I gave you guys those sounds as well. All right, so time for us to code some of the JavaScript. So the first thing we want to think about is what elements on the page are we going to be interacting with? So we're going to be interacting with this input field. So let me just mark what I'm doing here. Select the elements on the page we are going to be interacting with. So we're going to be interacting with this input field and this button to start. So to select these, let's see, this input field, I'm going to give it, oh, it already has an ID, age input, perfect. So let age input equal, and this is on the cheat sheet if you'd rather use that, but I think it's honestly faster for me just to type it because I use it so often. I'm also going to slide this over so that we get a bit more room. And we're going to select the thing on the page with ID age input. Now usually we've been selecting with IDs, but there's only one button on the page, so I want to show you an alternative. So let the button equal document.querySelector. And the same way you can select with CSS using an ID, you can also, or select with CSS using the element type, like an H2, or an H, or a div, or a button. I'm going to select the button just by using its element type because we only have one button on the page. So I'm going to select the button using just the word button, which because it doesn't have the hashtag is saying I'm looking for something, an element of the type button, and I'll select the first one I see, which is just this one. We could have used an ID, but just to mix it up. All right, now we have to think, okay, well, here's where things get interesting, right? We want to run some code if we click the button. That sounds a lot like an event listener to me. So I'm going to scroll up here. I'm going to find my event listener, and I'm going to grab that. If we click the button, do something. So here we go. Which element is listening for an event? Our button element is. The event type it's waiting for is it's waiting to be clicked. And once we click it, what we're going to have to do is the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to read the age from the input field. So let's create a new variable here. Let's let age equal. We're going to go to the age input field And we've done this a couple of times recently. We're going to grab the value from it. That's actually on the cheat sheet here. That if we want to get a value from an input field, what we do is we select the input field. So we've already done that in line 3. And then we get the value from it by just doing dot value. All right, now the next thing that's really interesting is when we grab the age from this, it's actually going to be a string. So what we're going to do is we'll say, okay, let's redefine age to be the number version of whatever that string was. So now age is going to be the number version of whatever they typed here, because what they typed here would have been the string. Okay, so now age is the right type. And we can think, okay, well, what we really want to do is we want to have two different things happen. If their age, let's say 21, oh, actually here I'm going to grab, this is a big one, right? So I'm going to grab this one from here. And let me just tab these things in so the code blocks are set up properly. So I like to see my code blocks inside of stuff. So here, these are both, it's like a code block, a couple of code blocks from the if-else are all inside of the code block from the event listener, because we really only want to check these conditions when they try to enter, when they click the button. So the condition here is going to be if the age is greater than or equal to 21, then we want to let them in the club. So let's start by alerting out, welcome to the club. You can enter. Otherwise, we want to reject them. So the else here is in any other case that their age is not greater than or equal to 21, we want to alert out, sorry, you are too young to enter the club. All right, so let's refresh it here and we can test it out now. If I put my age 33, I get welcome to the club, you can enter. If I put 10-year-old trying to enter the club, sorry, you are too young to enter the club. All right, so this is kind of interesting and all, but it kind of uses those pop-ups, right? And this is sort of similar to our last one. So what's interesting to me here is we can make this a more, I don't know, we can make this a better code, I think, by instead of using alerts to display messages, we can display some messages on the screen and stuff. And we can also play some sounds. So let's start by displaying the message on the screen instead. So I wanted to show this part. If we're going to display the message on the screen, we need to create an element that we're going to inject that, that message into. So I'm going to create a blank paragraph here, and I'm going to give it the ID of output field. And I'm going to leave it empty, no text to begin with. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to inject the alert messages into that, insert the alert messages into that so that they display on the screen instead of displaying as alerts. So it's actually pretty easy to do that. Now that we created that field on the HTML, we need to select it because we're going to be interacting with it. So I'm going to use the ID. I'm just going to call it, and I'll copy and paste the ID so I make sure that I get the spelling right. Let output field equal document.querySelector hashtag output field because we're selecting it by its ID. There's many paragraphs on the page, so we have to use the ID version of the selector. And here, instead of alerting this out, what we're going to do is we're going to say, don't alert it out. Take the output field and make the inner HTML equal to that. And then otherwise, what we're going to do is take the output field and make the inner HTML of that equal to that. And I want to give a funnier message here. Get lost, kiddo. I don't know. That's not that funny. I don't know. You guys are funnier than me. So maybe you can make a better message than that. All right, so let's see if this works. I'm going to refresh my page here. I can actually open up the JavaScript console while we're doing this. Wow, they zoomed in really far here. And when we check the age, welcome to the club, you can enter. Much better than displaying as a pop-up because it's more self-contained in the app. And if we try our 10-year-old, get lost, kiddo. Cool, awesome. Now it sounds like a real bouncer, really tough. All right, so we also can make it do some other stuff here. So this is kind of like extra, but we can make it play these nice sounds that I've recorded. So the first step for playing sounds is we actually have to add those sounds to our HTML file. So before the JavaScript, we're going to create a couple of audio elements. So the first source is going to be your.m4a, and I'll give this an ID as well. I'll call this your. And then we'll also create an audio element with a source of na.m4a. These files are already uploaded for you. If you want to use your own files, you can upload those by dragging them over here. And I'm going to make this na for the ID. Now we're going to be playing these sounds, which means we're going to be interacting with them. So we'll go over to our script.js and select them. Let your equal document.querySelector hashtag your, because we're selecting with the ID your. Let na equal document.querySelector hashtag na, because we're going to be selecting the na ID thing. Now, if we let them into the club, we're going to be like, welcome to the club, you can enter. And then we're going to play that sound. So here we go. We got to grab that sound from the cheat sheet. Notice that all this is inside of this code block. So what we're going to do, and the reason why it's in the code block is it only runs if their age is greater than 21, greater than or equal to 21. Next up here, if we're like, get lost, kiddo, we're also going to play out loud like, nah, bro, which is what this sound effect is. So let me grab that sound code one more time. And this time the sound that's going to play is nah, because we're not letting them into the club. And then we'll do nah.play. All right, cool. All right, so let's check these out. You won't be able to hear it, but I can tell you if it plays correctly. Nah, bro, it said it. Okay, cool. So I get the fave icon error. We're not going to worry about that because that's the icon here. I haven't taught you how to do that. Okay, it says welcome to the club, and then audio on my headphones, it says your, which is great because it's working perfect. So next up, I'm also going to make it change the background here to all red if we can't enter. So thinking about the background of the whole page, that's going to be the body element here. So I'm going to select the body element because if we're changing the background, now we're interacting with it. So let's let body, the whole body element, equal document.querySelector body. And then here we go. We'll do, to change the style of something, let me see if I put that on the cheat sheet. That would have been that crazy background project. My goodness, I did. Awesome. So how to change an element's CSS styling. So if we let them into the club, let's take the body element. Let's make its style. The name of the property that we're changing is the background property. And we're going to set it equal to green because we're letting them into the club. And if they can't get into the club, let's take that body element. Let's take the style properties of that, the background property in particular, and let's make it red because we're like, nah, you can't come into the club. So now we have a whole bunch of code that runs if it's true and a whole bunch of code that runs if it's false. This should be really cool. All right, so if we're 90 years old and we want to go to the club, it says it on the headphones. I know you guys may not believe me, but also notice that it turns green. And then if we're like a 6-year-old trying to get into the club, nah, bro, it says, and it displays the message here and makes it red. All right, so we have a pretty sick app here. We're taking this bouncer's job, but don't tell him because bouncers are scary. And all right, pretty cool. Hope this was helpful, guys. And I hope that you put your own creative touches on some of the messages or some of the audio.